Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Web Summit in Lisbon, Portugal. This is the United Nations SDG Media Zone, and we're broadcasting live from the Web Summit on UN Web TV and a number of other social media channels. We're delighted to be here. My name is Dan Thomas. I'm the Chief Communication Officer for the United Nations Global Compact, and I'm joined by Dianna Cohen, who's from the Plastic Pollution Coalition. Dianna, thank you so much for joining us here to talk about principled ocean business. There's an increasing interest among people around the world in the ocean and SDG 14 around protecting the ocean. Why do you think we're seeing this surge of interest from so many people who care about the ocean?
Well, I think that people are coming to realize that the ocean, we live on a blue planet. We are an ocean planet. The water and the ocean on this planet allow life on Earth. And I think that people are coming to realize that there are many different issues which are impacting the ocean and threatening the ocean, and therefore threatening our health.
Yeah. And a lot of those issues are caused because of the pollution and the plastic we've been using. And so tell us about plastic. How you've been going for 10 years, I believe.
Yeah.
Why is plastic so much a part of this conundrum?
Well, it's funny because I grew up in Los Angeles swimming in the Pacific Ocean and body surfing, and then learning how to surf and becoming a diver. And just in the course of my lifetime, I've seen more and more plastic in the ocean, not just on the west coast of the United States, but in the Mediterranean, in the Caribbean, in Hawaii, and now in Southeast Asia and other countries that I've had the great luck to travel to. And one of the things I realized about plastic and the way we use plastic, well, one is that many people don't realize that most plastic is made out of petroleum and byproducts of processing petroleum. So I think if we want to divest from our dependence on fossil fuels, part of that will include massively reducing our use of plastics and single-use plastics. But the way that it's impacting the ocean just in the course of my lifetime is pretty astronomically, disturbing. Right. And just as an individual, I don't think it's possible to clean it up. In fact, I'm not sure that, though our coalition has many cleanup organizations that are part of it, I'm not sure that cleanup and what we call downstream solutions will ultimately be what solves this problem. I really think that we need to continue to look upstream at all of the different points of entry and also points of production and use.
And so how are you working with companies around the world to look at that production of plastic and the way they use plastic?
Well, so as a global coalition, we're now over 1,000 organizations from 60 different countries on 6 continents. We work with companies in different ways at different levels. So we have many coalition members that work at a local level, but also work at a city level or a state level or a governmental level. One of the ways that we work with them is we've helped create a global plastic reduction legislative toolkit. And that is a toolkit that people can sign up for, access, and use as a model to create policy and legislation that will allow them to create change. So that's one of the ways that we're working on it. Another way is just a direct engagement with companies, and that can come in many different forms. One of the forms is invitations that we've had from companies to work with Unilever or Google or different companies that are taking an internal look at how much plastic they're creating, and then looking to see if there are ways that they can do an audit or do a measurable reduction in their own use of it. But I think companies need to take a look at themselves internally, and then also look at their production chain of whatever products or platforms they're providing to other people, and really take a look at how they can reduce plastics, and particularly single-use plastics, just across the spectrum, across the board.
So you're probably aware of the UN Global Compact Sustainable Ocean Principles. That's something we launched in September at the UN General Assembly. How helpful do you think those principles can be for the private sector in terms of taking responsibility for their impact on the ocean?
Well, I think that they're very useful in terms of setting goals. I'd like them to be even more ambitious than they are, but I also think it's really important, and this may come from my background as a visual artist, we also need to look at these systems holistically and how they interact with each other, because none of these things are siloed. They're all interconnected. So I think that would be, some of my feedback about the goals, but I think it's a wonderful place to start from.
And we're here at the Web Summit in Lisbon. You're here. Why have you come here? What is it about the Web Summit, the people here, the innovation that's happening here that attracts you to come and have this conversation?
I think that there's a wonderful energy here in Lisbon. I am particularly attracted to the Planet Tech component of Web Summit. I'd like to see that expand more into all of the days of presentations here, because I don't think that any business is really going to be viable and profitable in the long term if we're not paying attention to protecting the environment and our water and our air and our food and everything. I mean, it's all, again, I look at things holistically, but I feel like it's very valuable to be able to come here. And actually, part of the reason that I'm here as well is last weekend there was a We Are Zero Waste Youth Conference in Cascais, which is just nearby. And I was invited to participate in that and be a mentor. And I was so impressed by the young people here in Portugal and the work that they're doing towards zero waste, that I personally feel that the work we do as Plastic Pollution Coalition ultimately is only one small drawer in the greater international zero waste movement. And I'm so proud and humbled by the young people that I've met here in Lisbon and in Portugal who are working so hard towards a zero waste world. And really because nature doesn't create any waste, and it's something that I think about a lot. And I think that we need to figure out how to shift our systems so that we too are not creating waste, and so that we're looking at the materials that we use for packaging and everything that we do as valuable materials.
And give us an example of some of the innovations that you've seen young people come up with and propose that will help to sort of solve some of these challenges?
Well, so I would say a la Greta Thunberg, there's a young woman named Shelby O'Neill who's based in, I believe, Seattle or Northern California, and she created something that's called No Straw November, which is taking place right now. And she created that when she was 14 years old. And that's really taken on a life of its own, and people have expanded it internationally. So that's one example. Another example would be a young woman who's an innovator, an entrepreneur named Chelsea Briganti, who has a company called Lollyware. And she's developing replacements for plastic that are made out of algae, out of seaweed. So she's done a straw that functions just like a plastic straw and very much looks like a plastic straw and can be tinted in different natural colors, and is using those to help replace plastic straws. And it's 100% biodegradable and natural, non-toxic, biobenign. We really need to take those things into consideration.
How much do you think consumers can change the trajectory, the course of this problem?
I think that consumers have all the power in the world. I think that we as consumers, when we react, when we create a Twitter storm, when we send letters to companies and let them know that we're either displeased with something or really appreciate something that they're doing, they take notice, and we can create change in that way.
Now, you and I, we were both at the Ocean Conference in New York a few years ago.
Yes.
The second Ocean Conference is coming up here in Lisbon in June next year, June 2020. Yes,
cool.
It is. How do you think, and that's really around, it's really targeted around SDG 14, Life Below Water. How do you think governments are responding to this demand from consumers, from people, and from the private sector for more, policy systems, policy change around protecting the ocean?
I think that you're saying how are governments responding?
Yes. What are they doing enough?
I think governments are responding well. I think that they can do more. I'd like to get everybody in the government from the entire planet underwater, and if we can't get them diving in underwater to see what's going on there, then at least take them there using VR or other methods and film to communicate to them what's really happening. I mean, when I had the opportunity in 2010 to give a TED Talk on Mission Blue in the Galapagos Islands with Dr. Sylvia Earle, it was like going to university for 3 days with all of these top ocean scientists talking about a lot of doom and gloom and threatening situations, from ocean acidification to bottom line trawling to overfishing and ghost nets. It was like an intensive course in learning about everything that was really impacting the ocean, and pollution and organic pollutants and pollutants which stick to the surface of plastic and which include plastic are a really big part of that. But it's something that if we want to turn off the tap of that, we need to really go upstream, and that would be to production and use, and to holding companies responsible to take back all of the packaging and all of the products that they produce that are made out of these materials, so that we never have to worry about cleaning them up out of rivers or lakes or oceans.
But when you have that conversation with companies, are they receptive? Do they understand or think that they do have a responsibility to make that full cycle, to take it back?
I think that they're beginning to realize that, and you can see it in the commitments from the Ellen MacArthur report, or this Alliance for Waste, or whatever they're calling themselves. Some of it, I think, is particularly with the petrochemical industry companies, is just greenwashing. I mean, their profit is so enormous comparatively to how much they're committing, that I don't really take them seriously. I'm going to take them more seriously when I see us mining landfills, when I see people realizing that something's a valuable material. But unfortunately, we're in a moment in time that's actually very critical, because the entire plastic and petrochemical build-out is happening, and it basically, if you look at a graph, it looks like a hockey stick that is going in a trajectory straight up.
In the wrong direction.
The wrong direction.
Well, Dianna Cohen, CEO Plastic Pollution Coalition, thank you so much for joining us here in the United Nations SDG Media Zone, live at the Web Summit in Lisbon, Portugal.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.